As a hurricane battered the Texas coast, I received a photo of my husband, a multi-million-dollar CEO, toasting champagne with my sister, in Carbo, on a company expense account. I did not scream. I simply opened his laptop and found the plan my entire family signed to make me their sacrificial lamb. Listen closely, and you will understand how I quietly destroyed their kingdom with just a few timed emails and a polite smile in court. My name is Caroline Murphy. I am 34 years old and I live in Houston, Texas, where the humidity usually clings to you like a second skin and the thunderstorms roll in with the subtlety of a freight train. By day, I am the Chief Operating Officer of Novrier Systems, a medical software company where I manage logistics, put out fires, and ensure that complex systems do not collapse under their own weight. I am good at keeping things running. I am good at fixing things. I have been married for 4 years to Ethan Cross, the CEO of Iron Crest Capital, a man who sells dreams and manages private equity with a smile that could convince a shark to go vegan. If you could have seen me on that Monday night, you would have seen a woman who thought she had it all under control. I was standing in the kitchen of our sprawling minimalist home in River Oaks. The quartz countertops were cold under my palms. Outside, the sky was a bruised purple, and the wind was already whipping the magnolia trees against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The weathermen had been warning us about this storm for 3 days, telling us to batten down the hatches. I had prepared the house for the hurricane, just like I prepared everything else in my life. The storm shutters were ready, the generator was checked, and the emergency kit was stocked. But I was not prepared for the storm that was about to break inside my own kitchen. I made ubuco. It takes 3 hours to braise properly, and the smell of rosemary and white wine filled the room, fighting against the metallic scent of rain seeping in through the vents. We were supposed to be celebrating. Ethan had just closed a massive new fund for Iron Crest, something he had been working on for 6 months. He had promised to be home by 7:00. At 8:15, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a FaceTime request from Ethan. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and propped the phone up against the wine bottle. When the connection clicked through, the image was grainy. The storm was messing with the cell towers, or maybe the Wi-Fi, where he was simply terrible. "Hey, babe," Ethan said. His voice was tight, clipped. He was wearing a casual polo shirt, which was odd because he usually wore a suit until he walked through the front door. "Hi," I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "The Ossabuco is getting cold. Are you close?" "I am so sorry, Caroline," he said, and he actually looked pained. "I am stuck in Denver. A major investor panicked about the market volatility, and I had to fly out last minute to hold his hand. The weather here is a nightmare. All flights are grounded until tomorrow morning." I frowned. "Denver in late summer. That is terrible," I said, instinct kicking in. "Do you have a hotel? Do you need me to call your assistant to rebook your morning meetings?" "No. I handled it," he said quickly. Too quickly. "I just wanted to call and say happy anniversary for the fund launch. I will make it up to you. I have to go." The connection as he started to move the phone, intending to hang up, but his hand slipped. The camera angle swung violently to the left before correcting itself. "I need you to listen to me very carefully right now." In that split second, the universe decided to show me the truth. It was not a snowy window in Denver that I saw. I saw a corner of a wall painted a warm sandy beige, the kind of stucco you see in Mexico or the Mediterranean. I saw a table behind him with a half-empty margarita glass, sweating on a coaster that bore the distinctive turquoise logo of the Las Ventanas Resort. And right there, draped casually over the back of a wicker chair just over his left shoulder, was a silk scarf. It was Hermes. It was printed with a very specific vibrant pattern of tigers and jungle leaves. I knew that scarf because I had spent $600 on it last December. I had wrapped it in gold paper and given it to my sister, Megan, for Christmas. My breath hitched in my throat. "Ethan," I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He did not hear me. The screen froze. The video feed had lagged, stuck on a pixelated image of his collarbone, but the audio feed was still live. He thought he had ended the call. He lowered the phone, likely placing it face down on the table, but the microphone was still capturing everything. "You can hang up now, honey. a woman's voice said. It was unmistakably my mother, Donna. Her laugh was a sharp, distinct bark that I had heard my entire life. Then another voice cut through the static. Smoother, younger. Turn it off, Ethan, Megan said. Her voice was clear as a bell. She will start reading you a moral lecture if you stay on too long. God, she is so exhausting. Come on, raise your glass. Let us toast to our new kingdom. Our new kingdom. The words hit me like a physical blow to the sternum. I stood there frozen, staring at the frozen pixels on my phone screen while the audio continued for another 10 seconds. I heard the clink of glass against glass. I heard my father Patrick grumble something about the humidity being better than Houston. Then the connection finally died, and the screen went black. The silence that followed was louder than the wind howling outside. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird-like rhythm. It was the same feeling I used to get when I was 7 years old, watching my parents drive away to take Megan to a beauty pageant while leaving me with a babysitter because I had homework to do. It was the feeling of being left behind. But this was worse. This was not just exclusion. This was deception. Denver, no. They were in Cabo San Lucas. My husband, my sister, my mother, my father. I did not scream. I did not throw the expensive bottle of wine against the wall, though the urge vibrated in my fingertips. Instead, the COO in me took over. When a system fails, you do not panic. You diagnose the error. You find the root cause. I walked calmly to the kitchen island and opened my laptop. Ethan was brilliant at raising capital, but he was terrible with cybersecurity. He often asked me to print documents for him because he could not get the printer driver to work. Because of this, I had his email password saved in my browser. I had never used it. I respected his privacy. I respected our marriage. Tonight, I respected nothing but the truth. I logged into his corporate email account. I went straight to the search bar and typed in keywords like United and Delta. Nothing for Denver. Then I searched for confirmation. There it was. An email from a private charter service sent 3 days ago. Flight confirmation Houston to Cabo San Lucas. Departure Monday, 1,000 hours. Passenger manifest, Ethan Cross, Megan Murphy, Patrick Murphy, Donna Murphy. Accommodation, the Ty Warner Mansion at Los Ventanas. Total cost $42,000. Payment method Ion Capital corporate card ending in 4,120. He had expensed it. He had taken my entire family on a luxury vacation, lied to my face about it, and charged it to his company as a business trip. But why? Why lie? If they wanted a family trip, we could have gone on a family trip. Why exclude me? And what did Megan mean by our new kingdom? I closed the browser tab and walked down the hallway to Ethan's home office. The room smelled of leather and mahogany. On his desk sat his secondary laptop, a sleek gray machine he used for personal projects. He often left it running. I tapped the space bar. The screen lit up. It was not password protected because he trusted the security of our home. He trusted me to be the dutiful, uninterested wife who was too busy with her own work to snoop. The screen was filled with the dark interface of Slack. It was an internal workspace for Iron Crest, but there was a private channel pinned to the top. The channel name made my blood run cold. Castle Plan. I clicked on it. The members list confirmed my worst fears. Ethan, Megan, Donner, Patrick, and one other person, Graham Hall. I knew Graham. He was Ethan's general counsel, a slippery lawyer with a shark-skinned suit and eyes that never blinked enough. I scrolled up to the messages sent just an hour ago. Ethan just finished the call with her. Told her I'm in Denver. She bought it. She's probably worrying about my hotel room right now. Megan laughing emoji. God, she is so pathetic. Did you remember to tell her you miss her? Keep the guilt trip low. Graham Hall focus everyone. The deception is necessary, but the signature is mandatory. Ethan, remember to bring the trust amendment hard copy when you return. We cannot close the deal on the final block of shares without her signing off on the restructuring. Patrick, do not worry, Graham. She will sign. She always does what she thinks is best for the family. Donner, exactly. Just tell her it is for tax purposes. Tell her it protects Megan's future. Caroline has a savior complex. She lives to save everyone. And then the message that broke me, it was from Ethan, sent just minutes before he called me. Ethan, relax. I know how to handle my wife. Let her think she is the benevolent queen of this family. In reality, she is just the draft horse. Once she signs this amendment, we strip the assets, move the capital to the new entity, and she can go back to her spreadsheets while we enjoy the dividends. I sat back in Ethan's leather chair. The leather creaked, a sound that seemed deafening in the quiet room. Draft horse. That was what I was to them. Not a wife, not a daughter, not a sister. I was an animal to be worked until I collapsed. Pulling the carriage that they rode in, I looked out the window. The rain was slashing sideways now, the hurricane making landfall. Trees were bending, threatening to snap. But inside my chest, the devastation was already absolute. I looked at the glowing screen at the little castle emoji that mocked my entire existence. I realized then that I was not a member of their kingdom. I never had been. It was the territory they were planning to annex. I was the resource they were planning to mine, until nothing was left. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I took a picture of the screen. Then I took a screenshot of the passenger manifest on my laptop. I did not cry. Tears are for people who still have hope that things can be fixed. I knew with the cold clarity of a surgeon that this could not be fixed. It had to be excised. I turned to the window watching the storm rage and spoke to the empty room. To you, to anyone who would listen. They think I am the draft horse. They think I am the one who pulls the weight and keeps my head down. They forgot one thing. A horse knows exactly where the stables are, and a horse knows exactly how to kick down the barn door when it smells smoke. That was the moment I understood. The storm outside was just wind and rain. It would pass, but the storm I was about to unleash on my family, that was going to be a Category 5. I closed the laptop, but I did not put it to sleep. I let it hum alive and waiting. I had work to do to understand why I stood in that kitchen and calmly downloaded a folder that would incinerate my marriage. You have to understand the soil I grew up in. You have to understand the ecology of the Murphy family. We grew up in a small town in Oklahoma where the red dust coated everything, and the biggest event of the year was the high school football championship. In our house, there were two distinct roles assigned at birth, like characters in a play we never auditioned for. Megan was the star. I was the stage hand. Megan was born with spun gold hair and a smile that could make a stranger stop in the grocery store aisle. By the time she was 5 years old, my mother, Donner, had her in every beauty pageant within a 300-dem radius. Our weekends were consumed by hairspray, sequins, and the frantic energy of my mother living her unfulfilled dreams through my sister. I was the dark-haired one, the quiet one, the one who was good at math and remembering to take the trash out on Tuesdays. There is a term in psychology for this family dynamic. One child is the golden child, the repository of all the parents' hopes and projected narcissism. The other is the scapegoat, or in my case something I call the utility child. The utility child is not there to shine. She is there to make sure the lights stay on so the golden child can be seen. I remember my high school graduation vividly. It is a memory that still tastes like metallic ash in my mouth. I was the valedictorian. I had secured a full-ride scholarship to study systems engineering at a prestigious university in Texas. It was the culmination of 4 years of sleepless nights studying by flashlight while my parents and Megan watched reality television in the living room. When I walked across the stage to accept my diploma, I looked out into the crowd of parents fanning themselves with programs in the stifling gymnasium heat. I scanned the bleachers for my mother's floral dress or my father's broad shoulders. They were not there. They were 4 hours away, driving Megan to an open casting call for a teen reality show in Dallas. I remember standing in the parking lot afterward, holding my diploma, watching other families take photos and hug. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Oh, Caroline. Honey, I am so sorry," she said, her voice breathless. "We got a flat tire near Durant, and Megan is practically having a panic attack because the humidity is ruining her blowout. You understand, right? You are the strong one. You do not need us holding your hand like your sister does. We will celebrate when we get back. Order yourself a pizza." I did not order a pizza. I drove to the local cemetery sat on the hood of my beat-up sedan, and ate a granola bar while watching the sun go down. I told myself it was fine. I told myself that being the strong one was a compliment. It took me decades to realize that you are so strong is often just a manipulation tactic used by people who want to see how much weight they can pile on your back before you break. There was only one person who saw the cracks in the foundation. My grandfather, Seamus Ulray. Seamus was a hard-nosed Irish immigrant who had built a real estate empire from nothing but grit and a talent for seeing value where others saw dirt. He was my mother's father, but he looked at Donner and Patrick with a mixture of love and weary disappointment. He was the one who paid for my braces when my parents said they needed the money for Megan's vocal coach. He was the one who sat with me on the porch, teaching me how to read a balance sheet when I was 12 years old. "Caroline," he would say, his voice rough like gravel, "you are the only one in this lot who knows that money does not grow on trees. It grows from work. It grows from maintenance. You are the one who keeps the engine running. Do not ever give the steering wheel to someone just because they talk a good game." When Seamus died during my sophomore year of college, the reading of the will was the first time I saw the teeth behind my family's smiles. We gathered in the lawyer's mahogany-paneled office. My father, Patrick, was already talking about buying a boat. Megan was browsing luxury cars on her phone. Then the lawyer read the clause that stopped the world. "To my granddaughter Caroline Murphy, whom I trust to preserve the legacy, I leave 51% of the voting stock in Ully Holdings along with the chairmanship of the board. The remaining 49% of the assets shall be divided equally among my daughter Donner, my son-in-law Patrick, and my granddaughter Megan, to be distributed as quarterly dividends." The silence in the room was absolute. Then the screaming started. 51%. My mother shrieked. "She is 20 years old. She is a child. Patrick, do something. She must have poisoned him against us. She must have lied to him." Megan burst into tears, the kind of theatrical sobbing she had perfected for pageant judges. "But Grandpa promised me I would be the face of the company. I am the one with the following. I am the one people want to look at." They turned on me then, not with violence, but with a pressure so intense it felt like gravity increasing. They told me I was selfish. They told me I had stolen their birthright. They told me I did not know how to enjoy life. So why did I need the control? I was young. I was grieving the only person who had ever loved me for me, and I just wanted the shouting to stop. I wanted them to love me, so I made a deal with the devil. "Fine," I told them, my voice shaking. "I will keep the voting rights because Grandpa wanted that. But I will sign a directive ensuring that the dividends are maximized. You will get the money. I will just do the work." That was the mistake that sealed my fate for the next 10 years. That was our dynamic. I finished college working 2 jobs despite my inheritance because I felt guilty spending the family money. I sent checks home to help Patrick pay off the mortgage on a house that was far too big for them. Meanwhile, Megan dropped out of community college after 1 semester to move to Los Angeles and pursue a career as an influencer. Every condo lease, every leased Range Rover, every rhinoplasty and breast augmentation was funded by the dividends I signed off on. I became the designated fixer. When Megan got a DUI in Malibu, I paid the lawyer. When Patrick made a bad investment in an ostrich farm scheme, I covered the loss to save his credit score. When Donner wanted to renovate the kitchen for the 3rd time, I signed the check. I convinced myself this was love. I told myself that by fixing their problems, I was earning my place at the table. But there was a moment, a crack in the glass. When I was 25 years old, I applied for a small loan to buy my first reliable car. The bank manager, a kind woman with reading glasses on a chain, looked at her screen and frowned. "Ms. Murphy, I cannot approve this," she said. "Why not?" I asked. "My credit score should be perfect." "Your score is 520, she said. "You have $40,000 in outstanding credit card debt that has gone to collections." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I do not have a credit card," I said. She turned the screen around. There was a platinum Visa opened 3 years prior, maxed out on luxury hotels, medical bills, and high-end boutiques. It had been opened using my Social Security number. I went home and confronted my mother. I expected her to be shocked. I expected her to call the police. Instead, Donner waved a hand dismissively while chopping vegetables. Oh, that she said it was just a system error. Caroline, I was confused. I needed to pay for your grandmother's hospital bills. You remember when she fell and I must have mixed up our information. I meant to pay it off, but things got tight. Do not make a big deal out of it. You can fix it right. You always fix things. And I believed her. I believed her because the alternative that my own mother had stolen my identity to fund her lifestyle was too painful to look at directly. I paid off the debt. I spent 3 years repairing my credit score. I never spoke of it again. But tonight, sitting in my husband's office with the rain lashing against the window, that memory surfaced with the violence of a drowned body rising to the top of a lake. I looked at the Slack group named Castle Plan. I looked at the messages where they called me a draft horse. I realized then that the credit card incident was not a mistake. It was a test run. It was a prototype. They had spent my entire life grooming me for this. They raised me to be responsible, not so I could succeed, but so I could be harvested. They praised my resilience because my resilience paid their bills. They praised my loyalty because my loyalty kept them out of jail. I was not a member of the family. I was the host organism, and they were the parasites who had finally decided that feeding off me was not enough. They wanted to consume the host entirely. I thought about Seamus's letter, the one I had kept hidden in a safe deposit box all these years. He had warned me. He had told me that people who want the fruit without planting the tree will eventually cut the tree down for firewood. I stared at the screen. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. They wanted a kingdom, fine. I would give them exactly what they asked for. I would give them the reality of a kingdom without a treasurer, without a general, without a worker. I would show them what happens when the draft horse unhitches herself from the wagon and watches it roll off the cliff. If you asked me to pinpoint the exact moment I lost myself, I would not point to the storm in Houston or the empty wine bottle in my kitchen. I would point to a conference center in Austin, Texas 4 years ago. It was the annual Southwest FinTech Summit. The air conditioning was set to Arctic temperatures, and the room smelled of stale coffee and ambitious cologne. I was there representing Nova You're sitting in the third row trying to look engaged while a series of men in fleece vests talked about blockchain. Then Ethan Cross walked onto the stage. He did not wear a fleece vest. He wore a navy bespoke suit that fit him like armor. He did not use a podium. He walked the edge of the stage with a microphone in hand, looking relaxed, dangerous, and utterly captivating. He was the CEO of Iron Crest Capital, a man whom Forbes had just named one of the 30 under 30 to watch. He spoke about financial innovation for the millennial generation and disrupting the legacy banking system. It was a lot of buzzwords, frankly, but the way he said them made you believe that if you did not invest with him, you were choosing to be a dinosaur. When the QA session started, I raised my hand. "Mr. Cross," I said, my voice steady despite the hundreds of eyes turning toward me. "You talk about disruption, but your risk assessment models seem to rely heavily on the same algorithmic biases that caused the crash of 2008. How exactly is Iron Crest insulating its retail investors from a liquidity crisis if the market corrects by more than 10%? The room went quiet. It was a technical question, a mean question, the kind of question that usually makes a speaker stumble. Ethan did not stumble. He stopped pacing. He looked right at me, shielding his eyes from the stage lights, and smiled. A slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "That is the smartest question I've heard all day," he said into the mic. "What is your name, Caroline?" I said, "Well, Caroline," he said, holding my gaze. "Remind me not to play poker with you, but here is the answer." He answered it brilliantly. After the panel, while I was packing up my laptop, I felt a presence beside me. It was him up close. He was even more overwhelming. He smelled of sandalwood and crisp bannotes. "You are dangerous." "Caroline," he said, handing me a business card that felt thicker than a playing card. "Let me buy you a coffee. I need to know where you learned to read a balance sheet like that." We went to a coffee shop around the corner. Within 20 minutes, he had added me on LinkedIn, followed me on Instagram, and asked for my personal number. He was intense, focused, and incredibly charming. But it was what he said next that truly hooked me. He was scrolling through his phone, pretending to look something up when he paused. "Wait," he said, looking up with wide, faux innocent eyes. "Oh, as in Seamus Ulry, the real estate legend." "My grandfather," I said, bracing myself for the usual reaction, people asking for money or investment tips. Ethan lowered his phone. He looked at me with something that resembled reverence. "I wrote my college thesis on your grandfather's acquisition strategies in the 1980s. He said softly. The man was a genius. He saw value in the dust. "You have his eyes. You know that same sharpness. No wonder you grilled me there." For the first time in my life, I felt like someone was not looking at me as a bank account or a fixer. He was looking at me as a legacy. He was looking at me as an intellectual equal. That was how the love bombing began. It was not a trickle. It was a fire hose. He did not just date me. He campaigned for me every Monday. A bouquet of white pays, my favorite, which I had mentioned exactly once, would arrive at the Novacure front desk. They cost $300 a pop, easy. My colleagues would ooh and ah, telling me how lucky I was. On weekends, he would fly us to New York or San Francisco. We flew private, or at least that is what he called it. I later learned they were empty legs on chartered flights he got at a discount. But at the time, sipping champagne at 30,000 a T, I felt like a queen. He spoke in a language I had never heard from a man before. He did not talk about us as a couple. He talked about us as a merger. "I do not just want a wife, Caroline," he told me one night over dinner at New, staring intensely into my eyes. "I want a partner, a co-CEO of my life, someone who understands the weight of leadership. You and I, we are a power couple. We are going to build an empire." It was intoxicating. After years of being the draft horse for my family, here was a stallion offering to run alongside me. 6 months in, the financial grooming started. It was so subtle, I mistook it for care. He was at my apartment, looking at the stack of mail on my counter. Statements from 3 different brokerages, bank accounts for all dividends, tax documents. "This is a mess, babe," he said, shaking his head affectionately. "You are spending hours every month managing this admin work. You should be focusing on your career." "I know." I sighed. "I just do not trust anyone else to handle it." "Trust me," he said. "Look, Ironrest has a family office division. We handle this for high net worth families all the time. Let me sweep your accounts into our management structure. We can optimize your tax exposure, reinvest the dividends automatically, and save you 10 hours a week." It made sense. He was a finance wizard. I was busy. So I signed. I signed a limited power of attorney. I signed transfer documents. I signed digital authorizations. "It is just procedural," he said, tapping the sign here flags on the documents just so I can move money between accounts without bothering you for a password every time. I remember my hand hovering over the paper for a second. A tiny voice in the back of my head, Seamus's voice, whispered, "Never give the steering wheel to anyone." But then Ethan kissed my temple and whispered, "We are a team now." And I signed. There was only one person who tried to stop the train. Riley Hart. Riley has been my best friend since the 3rd grade. She is an AR nurse who deals with trauma victims and drug addicts every day. She has a radar that is calibrated to military standards. I introduced her to Ethan at a cocktail party about 8 months into our relationship. Ethan turned on the charm, flashing his Rolex and talking about his charitable foundations. Riley just watched him sipping her cheap beer. Later that night, while Ethan was in the bathroom, Riley pulled me onto the balcony. "I do not like him, Caroline," she said bluntly. I've laughed. "But he is perfect. He is successful. He is handsome. He treats me like gold. He does not look at you like a person." "Cared," she said, her voice serious. "He looks at you like you are a company he is trying to acquire. He is doing due diligence, not dating. It is like he is calculating your liquidation value while he is holding your hand." I got angry. I felt defensive. "You are just jealous." I snapped, which was a terrible thing to say. "You are so used to seeing disasters in the ER that you cannot recognize something good when it happens." Riley held up her hands and surrender. "Okay, But when he strips the assets, do not say I did not warn you. When I told Ethan about it later, a mistake, I know, he sighed sadly. She is just negative energy. Caroline, he said soothingly, some people are intimidated by success. They want to drag you back down to their level. If we are going to grow, we need to surround ourselves with people who support the vision, not anchors. Slowly, I stopped seeing Riley as much. I isolated myself in the golden cage he was building. Then came the wedding. We got married in Napa Valley at a vineyard that cost $50,000 just to rent for the afternoon. It was a spectacle. Drone photographers, a live jazz orchestra, a six-course tasting menu. Ethan told everyone he was paying for it. "My gift to my bride," he said. In reality, he had pulled me aside 3 weeks before the wedding, looking stressed. "Cash flow is a little tight at Ironcrest right now because of the new acquisition," he had said. "Could we dip into the Ori dividends just to cover the vendor deposits? I will reimburse the account next month." I signed the check, $200,000. He never reimbursed it. But the moment that should have made me run, the moment that still haunts me, was the reception. My father Patrick stood up to give his toast. He was 3 scotches deep. His face flushed. He held the microphone loosely, swaying slightly. "You know, folks," he boomed, his voice echoing over the vineyard, "we always worry about Caroline. She is too smart for her own good. You know, a little intense. We wondered who would ever be able to handle a woman who cares more about spreadsheets than shopping." The crowd chuckled nervously. I forced a smile, gripping my champagne flute so hard I thought the stem would snap. But then comes Ethan. Patrick pointed his glass at my new husband, a man who finally knows what to do with all that potential. And let us be honest, a man who knows how to spend her money better than she does. The room erupted in laughter. It was played as a joke. My mother laughed. Megan clapped her hands. Ethan threw his head back and roared with laughter, raising his glass to my father. I was the only one not laughing. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. It was a joke, right? Just a tasteless, sexist joke. But looking at Ethan's face, seeing the smug satisfaction in his eyes, I felt a sudden, terrifying clarity. They were not laughing with me. They were laughing because they had just closed the deal. After the honeymoon, we moved into the penthouse in downtown Houston. It was a stunning property, floor-to-ceiling glass, a private elevator, a view of the skyline. It was purchased by Ali Holdings as an investment property. I had signed the deed, but when Texas Business Monthly came to interview Ethan for a profile on the new kings of capital, I heard him giving the tour. "Yes, I bought this place last year," Ethan told the reporter, leaning casually against the marble island I had paid for. "I wanted a home base that reflected the height of my ambitions. Caroline loves it, of course. I just want her to be comfortable." When the article came out, the headline was "Ethan Cross, the Self-Made Titan and His Penthouse Palace." I confronted him about it gently. "Babe, it is just PR," he said, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. "It builds confidence in Ironcrest. If investors think the CEO has personal liquidity, it is good for us. But his mind is yours, right? Why are you so obsessed with credit?" I let it go. I let everything go. I admitted to myself, and now I admit to you that I saw the red flags. They were not subtle. They were giant, waving crimson banners. But you have to understand something about women like me, women who have spent their whole lives being the strong one, the fixer, the reliable one. We are exhausted deep down in a place we rarely show the world. We are desperate for someone to come along and say, "Put the load down. I have got this." I wanted to believe the fairy tale. I wanted to believe that for once I was the one being taken care of. That desire is a blindness. It is a drug. And that is exactly when you sign the papers you should not sign. That is exactly when you hand over the keys to the kingdom thinking you are handing them to a partner when in reality you are handing them to a pillager. I thought I was walking into a marriage. In truth, I was walking into a slaughterhouse, and I had just handed them the knife. If I could go back in time and shake the woman I was 7 days ago, I would grab her by the shoulders and scream until my voice gave out. But I cannot. All I can do is tell you what it looks like when a trap is set by the people who are supposed to love you the most. It happened exactly 1 week before the hurricane. 7 days before, I found myself staring at a photo of a margarita in Carbo. Ethan insisted on hosting a dinner at the penthouse. He called it a strategy session, but he dressed it up as a family reunion. He invited my parents, Megan, and Graham Hall, that oily lawyer with the sharkskin suit I mentioned earlier. Ethan introduced Graham as the family trust legal advisor, a title that sounded important, but meant absolutely nothing. The air in the dining room was thick enough to choke on. We were eating Chilean sea bass, a dish that cost $1.40 a plate, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. My mother, Donner, was wearing a new diamond tennis bracelet that I knew with a sinking feeling had been paid for by the O'Leary quarterly dividend I had approved 2 weeks prior. Midway through the meal, Ethan stood up. He tapped his wine glass with a silver fork. "I have something to show you all," he said, flashing that charismatic smile that had once melted my knees. He picked up a remote and clicked it. The massive 85-inch television on the wall flickered to life. A PowerPoint slide appeared. The title was written in gold. Serif font. "The Murphy Cross Family Kingdom Plan." I almost laughed. It was so pretentious, but no one else laughed. Medin looked entranced. My father Patrick leaned forward, his eyes greedy. Ethan began his pitch. He walked around the table like he was back at that fintech conference in Austin. "Caroline has done an incredible job holding the fort," he said, nodding at me. "But holding the fort does not build a legacy. We need to expand. We need to leverage our assets. This plan proposes a consolidation. We merged the O'Leary Holdings assets with a new high-yield vehicle under Iron Crest management." He clicked to the next slide. It was a complex diagram of arrows and boxes. "To do this," he continued, his voice smooth as velvet, "we need to streamline the ownership structure. Specifically, we need to transfer the 51% voting block currently in Caroline's name into the new family trust." The room went deadly silent. I put my fork down. The clatter against the china sounded like a gunshot. "Transfer the voting block?" I asked, my voice calm but tight. "You mean I give up control?" Ethan smiled. The kind of smile you give a slow child. "Not give up, but consolidate. You will still be a beneficiary, but the voting rights will be managed by a committee. Me, your father, Graham, and you. It is for tax efficiency. It saves us nearly 12% in capital gains annually." I looked at the slide. Then I looked at my family. So I said, looking at my father, "You want me to hand over the steering wheel of the company Grandpa built, the company I have been running for 10 years. Patrick slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "Oh, for Christ's sake, Caroline," he shouted. His face was flushing a dark, ugly red. "Why do you always have to be so difficult?" "I am not being difficult, Dad," I said. "I am being prudent. Grandpa left that 51% to me for a reason. Because you manipulated him." My mother hissed. She pointed a manicured finger at me across the centerpiece. "You have always been selfish. Caroline, you have a big career. You have your rich husband. Look at your sister. She is trying to build a brand. She needs capital. But you just want to hoard the control because it makes you feel superior to us." Megan chimed in, swirling her wine. "Honestly, Caroline, it is embarrassing. You do not understand branding. You are an operator. Let Ethan and me handle the vision. We are going to build a kingdom. You are just in the way." I felt like I had been slapped. By the way, I was the one paying for the wine she was drinking. I turned to Graham Hall. He had been sitting quietly watching us like a vulture waiting for a wounded animal to stop kicking. "Graham," I said, "explain the voting structure in this new trust." Graham cleared his throat. He adjusted his glasses. "Well, Caroline, legally speaking, it is a carved-out protection vehicle. You remain the primary economic beneficiary, meaning you get the income, but the administrative powers. The voting rights are delegated to the trustee board to ensure swift execution of market opportunities. It is standard industry practice for assets exceeding $10 million. He was speaking fast, using jargon to bury the lead. "So I lose my veto power?" I said technically no. Graham said, smiling thinly, "You surrender individual veto in favor of majority board rule," which meant in a room with Ethan, Patrick, and Graham. I would be outvoted 3-1 every single time. I need to read this. I said I am not signing anything tonight. The temperature in the room dropped 20. Ethan's smile vanished. He looked at me with cold, hard eyes. Caroline, he said, his voice low, we have a closing window on this tax structure. If we do not file by the end of the month, the family loses hundreds of thousands of dollars. Are you really going to cost your parents that kind of money because of your ego? It is not ego, Ethan, I said. It is due diligence. I will send the documents to an independent lawyer tomorrow. No, Patrick roared. He stood up, knocking his chair back. We are not bringing some stranger into family business. Graham leaned in. Caroline, legal fees in Houston for this kind of trust work are upwards of $800 an hour. Why waste the family's money when I have already done the work? Do you not trust your own husband? It was the weaponized question. Do you not trust me? I looked at Ethan. He had switched tactics. He was no longer the aggressive CEO. Now he was the wounded husband. He slumped in his chair, rubbing his face with his hands. I have been working on this for 6 months. Caroline, he whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. I did this for you, so you could stop working so hard, so we could be a real team. And here you are treating me like a hostile takeover. I looked around the table. My mother looked disgusted. My father looked furious. Megan looked bored. And Ethan looked like I had just stabbed him in the heart. I felt the walls closing in. This is how they do it. They do not force you with a gun. They corner you with guilt. They make you feel like the crazy one for asking to see the map before you get in the car. Fine, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I will read it myself tonight, but I'm not signing right now. The dinner ended 10 minutes later. No one said goodbye to me. My parents hugged Ethan and ignored me. Megan took a selfie in the elevator and did not even look in my direction. For the next 4 days, my house became a silent war zone. Ethan did not yell. He punished me with silence. He moved through the penthouse like a ghost. When I tried to talk to him, he would give one-word answers. Fine. Okay, whatever. He slept with his back to me right on the edge of the mattress. When I reached out to touch his shoulder in the middle of the night, he flinched away as if my touch burned him. I thought we were partners, he said into the darkness on Thursday night. I thought you wanted to build a life with me. I guess I was wrong. I lay there staring at the ceiling, tears leaking out of the corners of my eyes. I want to pause here and say something to you. When society teaches women to be good wives, what they often mean is compliant wives. We are taught that keeping the peace is our responsibility. We are taught that if our husband is unhappy, it is a reflection of our failure. When you are forced to choose between a healthy boundary and the label of a good wife, most of us will choose to hurt ourselves just to keep the peace. I almost did. I was so close to breaking. I just wanted him to smile at me again. I just wanted the Cold War to end. Then came Monday morning, the morning of the storm, the morning of the Denver trip. I woke up early, but Ethan was already up. He was dressed in his travel clothes, jeans, and a cashmere sweater. His suitcase was by the door. He was in the kitchen making coffee. He seemed different, lighter. Hey, he said, turning to me with a small, hopeful smile. Puffy? I blinked, surprised by the sudden thaw. Yes, please. He poured me a cup and slid it across the island. Then he slid a blue folder across the marble right next to the coffee. Look, he said softly. I know I pushed hard last week. I am sorry. I just want us to be secure. I am heading to Denver for this emergency meeting, but if I can get this trust amendment filed before I get back, I can lock in the tax rate for your parents. He looked at me with those blue eyes that I had fallen in love with. I left the signature page on top. He said, you do not have to read the whole boring legal jargon again. It is exactly what we discussed. Just sign it. Leave it on the counter, and I will have Graham pick it up later. Do this for us, for the kingdom. He walked around the island, kissed me on the forehead, and whispered, I love you, Cosio. Then he grabbed his bag and walked out the door. I stood there in the silent kitchen. The storm clouds were gathering outside, turning the morning light gray. I looked at the folder. Attached to the front was a yellow sticky note. In Ethan's handwriting it said, "Sign this to help me close the deal with the pension fund." Wifey. I picked up a pen. I hovered the tip of the pen over the signature line. Caroline O. Murphy. All I had to do was scribble my name and the tension would be over. My parents would be happy. Ethan would be affectionate again. I could go back to being the good wife. But then I remembered Seamus. I remembered the feeling of my grandfather's rough hand on my shoulder. Never give the steering wheel to anyone just because they talk a good game. My hand froze. I cannot explain it. It was not logic. It was instinct. It was the same instinct that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you are walking alone in a parking garage. I put the pen down. I will read it one more time tonight. I whispered to the empty room. I will sign it when he gets back. I left the folder on the counter, unsigned. I grabbed my purse and went to work at Novacure, thinking I had just bought myself a few days of time. I did not know then that my decision did not matter. I did not know that while I was driving to work, fighting the preterm traffic, a digital version of that document was already traveling across the internet. I did not know that 3,000 m away in a resort in Carbo, my sister Megan was laughing as she traced my signature onto an iPad, perfecting the forgery she had been practicing since middle school. I thought I had held the line. In reality, they had simply walked around me. But leaving that paper unsigned did one thing. It proved that my signature on the digital file was a lie, and that one unsigned piece of paper on my kitchen counter was about to become the most dangerous weapon in my arsenal. Let us return to that moment in the study with the hurricane hammering against the glass and the glow of my husband's laptop illuminating the wreckage of my life. I sat there staring at the Slack channel named Castle Plan. My heart was no longer racing. It had slowed to a cold, heavy thud, like a gavel hitting a block of ice. I was done reacting. I was entering operating mode. In my line of work, when a system is compromised, you do not just stare at the error logs. You export the data. You secure the evidence before the hackers know you are inside the perimeter. I moved the mouse cursor to the settings gear icon at the top of the channel. My hand was steady. I selected Export Channel History. I chose the JSON format, ensuring I got every timestamp, every attachment, and every emoji reaction. I emailed the zip file to my personal encrypted Proton Mail account, the one I used for sensitive Novacure intellectual property, the one Ethan did not know existed. I spoke to the empty room, my voice flat. "This is the moment I copy your script, Ethan." Then I opened a new tab and went to his email inbox again. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I searched for Graham Holt and sorted by date. There it was, an email that had arrived just 2 hours ago while I was cooking the Uzbuco. Subject: DocuWine completed. Murphy Family Trust Amendment V4 from DocuWine System Body. All parties have signed. Please find the executed copy attached. My stomach dropped. I had not signed anything. The physical folder was still sitting on the quartz countertop in the kitchen, untouched. I opened the attachment. I scrolled to the final page. There, above a line labeled Caroline O. Murphy, primary beneficiary, was a perfect reproduction of my signature. The loop on the C was slightly elongated, just the way I do it. The sharp downstroke on the Y was precise. If you had shown me this paper without context, even I would have swore I had signed it. But I had not. I went to the DocuSign website. Ethan used the same password for everything, a variation of his college football jersey number and the street he grew up on. I typed it in. It worked. I navigated to the Manage tab and found the envelope. I did not just look at the document. I clicked on History to view the certificate of completion. This is the audit trail that most people ignore, but it is the place where digital crimes leave their footprints. I scanned the log. Signer Caroline Murphy. Status authenticated via email link. Time 6:42 in the evening. Central Standard Time. IP address 20,115.88. I opened a new browser tab and ran an IP geolocation trace. Location: Carbol, San Lucas, Baja, California, Sur, Mexico, ISB, Las Honors Resort Guest Wi-Fi. They were not just mocking me. They were committing federal wire fraud from a luxury resort suite. But how did they get the signature so perfect? I switched back to the Slack export I had just downloaded. I needed to find the conversation that happened around 6:42. I scrolled through the chat log. 6:35 in the evening. Graham Holt, the portal is open. We need the signature now to log the timestamp before the Asian markets open. It makes the backdating easier to defend if we are audited. 6:40 in the evening. Ethan Caroline is cooking. I cannot get her to log in remotely without raising suspicion. 6:41 in the evening. Megan, oh my God. You guys are amateurs. Move over. I have the iPad. 6:43 in the evening. Megan Dunn. Sticker. A cartoon cat wearing sunglasses. 6:44 in the evening. Ethan looks authentic. Good job. 6:45 in the evening. Megan, of course, it looks authentic. I have been practicing her signature since middle school. How do you think I got out of gym class senior year or signed those permission slips for the spring break trip? Mom and Dad said no to chill. She is none the wiser. I read that line 3 times. I have been practicing her signature since middle school. The credit card debt when I was 25, the loan applications, the random authorizations I found over the years that my mother dismissed as clerical errors. It was never a mistake. It was Megan. My sister had been stealing my identity for 15 years, and my parents had likely known the entire time. They had not just allowed it. They had relied on it. I was not a person to them. I was a checkbook with a pulse. I closed the laptop. I did not slam it. I closed it gently with the reverence one might show a loaded weapon. I needed to check one more thing. I walked out of the office and into the master bedroom. Behind a large abstract painting of the Houston skyline that Ethan had bought using my money was a walled safe. I punched in the code. It was my birthday. How ironic. Inside, stacked neatly, were the deeds to the penthouse, our marriage license, and a thick leather binder containing the original Ollie Holdings Incorporation papers and my grandfather's will. I took the binder out. My hands were trembling slightly now, not from fear, but from a strange vibrating adrenaline. I flipped past the legal jargon, past the incorporation certificates from 1980, until I reached the back pocket of the binder. There was a sealed envelope there. It was yellowed with age on the front in shaky block handwriting. It read for Caroline only if she ever doubts. I had found this envelope 10 years ago, right after Seamus died. I had never opened it because I had wanted to honor his memory by trusting the family he left behind. I had wanted to prove that we could be the family he wanted us to be. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper and a smaller index card-sized document printed on thick security watermarked paper. I unfolded the letter. The smell of old tobacco and peppermint. Seamus's smell wafted up, hitting me harder than the storm outside. My dearest Caroline, if you are reading this, it means the wolves are at the door. I hope I'm wrong. I hope your mother and father grew up. I hope your sister found her own way. But I built a fortune by betting on human nature, and human nature rarely changes. You think you own 51% of the company. You do. But the lawyers call those class a common stock. They are powerful, but they are vulnerable to things like trusts, marriage consolidations, and bad advice. What nobody knows, not your parents, not the board, and certainly not any husband you might find, is that I created a fail-safe. I converted the controlling interest into Class 5 founders' shares. Class 5 shares have a unique property, Caroline. They are non-transferable. They cannot be moved into a trust. They cannot be sold. They cannot be reassigned to a holding company unless they are accompanied by a physical authentication code that matches the corporate seal in the vault. Without that code, any digital transfer is void. It is just a piece of paper with no teeth. The code is not written down here. It is the date of the day we went fishing at Lake Texoma, followed by the weight of that catfish you caught. You remember it was the only time I ever saw you truly proud of yourself. If one day you see people trying to gather everything into one pile for the good of the family, you remember this. No one holds the keys but you. If you do not use this to protect yourself, they will use you to protect themselves. Lover, grantor. I sat on the floor of the closet clutching the letter. July 12, 1999. 8 LB for us. 71-2,199,984. That was the code, the Class 5 key. Suddenly, the pieces of Ethan's plan clicked together. Why was Graham Holt so desperate for me to sign the paper document on the kitchen counter if Median could just forge it digitally? Because the digital forgery was enough to fool the banks for the secondary assets. It was enough to move the cash, the liquid investments, the small properties. But for the core of the empire, the 51% voting bloc of Alri Holdings, the digital transfer would fail at the clearinghouse level without the Class 5 authentication code. They did not have the code. They did not even know the Class 5 shares existed. They likely thought the transfer was blocked by some administrative red tape that a wet signature and a physical notarization would bypass. That was why Ethan had left the folder on the counter with the sticky note. That was why he was playing the Trust Me card so hard. They had built a beautiful, elaborate digital cage for me. They had forged my name on the door. But they did not realize that the beast they were trying to trap was already standing outside the bars, holding the only key that mattered. They had initiated a transfer that was technically impossible to complete. And by forging my signature on the trust amendment, they had just committed a felony to move assets that without the Class 5 verification would technically remain in legal limbo. I stood up, a cold calm washed over me. I did not need to scream. I did not need to fly to Carbo and throw a drink in their faces. In fact, confronting them now would be the worst thing I could do. If I told them I knew, they would scramble. They would destroy the laptop. They would claim the forgery was a prank. They would find a way to gaslight me. No, I needed to let them think they had won. I needed them to feel safe. I walked back to the kitchen. I looked at the folder on the counter, the one Ethan wanted me to sign. I picked it up. I walked to the shredder in the pantry. I fed the document into the machine, watching my name and the lies turn into confetti. Then I went back to studying. I compiled everything, the Slack JSON file, the screenshots of the flight manifest, the DocuLine audit trail, the photo of the Class 5 letter, and a summary of the credit card fraud from years ago. I opened a new email draft to Monica Alvarez. Subject: Urgent Corporate Fraud, Identity Theft, War Holdings, Asset Protection. Monica Alvarez was not a family friend. She was a shark. She was a former federal prosecutor who now ran a boutique firm specializing in complex asset recovery and executive fraud. I had met her once at a charity gala, and she had told me, if you ever need to kill a snake without getting bitten, call me. I typed the body of the email. M. Alvarez, my husband and my family are currently attempting to defraud me of my controlling interest in Alari Holdings. They have forged my signature on federal trust documents. I have the logs. I have the proof of intent. And I have a Class 5 instrument they do not know about. I need to meet you tomorrow morning at 8:00. I want to burn the kingdom down. I hit send. The email whooshed away. I looked at the time. It was 3:00 in the morning. The hurricane was raging outside, tearing branches from trees and flooding the streets. But inside the penthouse, it was quiet. I went to the guest bedroom. I locked the door. I curled up on the bed, not as a victim, but as a witness who had just finished preparing the prosecution's opening statement. I fell asleep to the sound of the wind, dreaming of a fishing trip in 1999 and a catfish that was about to swallow a boat whole. The offices of Alvarez and Associates were located on the 40th floor of a glass monolith in downtown Houston. The city below was still shaking off the water from the hurricane, the streets glistening like wet asphalt veins. But up here, the air was filtered, cool, and smelled of expensive espresso and predatory competence. Monica Alvarez did not look like a shoulder to cry on. She looked like a weapon. She was a woman in her mid-40s with sharp features, dark hair pulled back into a severe bun, and eyes that assessed you like an actuary calculating risk. She was a former federal prosecutor who had made a name for herself dismantling Ponzi schemes, and she moved with the economy of someone who billed $1,200 an hour. I sat across from her at a desk that seemed to be made of a single slab of black marble. Between us sat the stack of evidence I had printed at 3:00 in the morning, the Slack logs, the DocuLine audit trail, the flight manifest, and the letter from my grandfather. Monica had been reading for 20 minutes in absolute silence. The only sound in the room was the rhythmic tapping of her pen against the desktop. Finally, she looked up. She did not smile. She did not offer me a tissue. "Caroline," she said, her voice low and precise, "I need you to understand exactly what you have brought me. This is not a divorce case. This is not a family dispute. This is a federal crime scene." She tapped the document log with her pen. "Your husband and your sister executed a digital signature on a document involving assets regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. They did this across international borders using a server in Mexico to alter a trust in Texas. That is wire fraud. That is identity theft. That is forgery. And because Iron Capital is a registered investment advisor, Ethan has also just committed a massive breach of fiduciary duty. If we take this to the U.S. attorney, he does not just lose his job. He goes to federal prison for 5 to 10 years. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I had known it was bad, but hearing it laid out in legal statutes made it real. Monica leaned back, crossing her arms. "Here is the mechanics of the heist," she explained. "Ethan has been using the power of attorney documents you signed, the ones for tax efficiency, to leverage the secondary assets of O'Leary Holdings. He has been taking out loans against the rental properties, the cash reserves, the small commercial strips. That is why your parents have been living so well. He has been draining the moat to feed them." She pulled the Class 5 letter from the stack, but he could not get into the castle. He could not touch the 51% voting bloc because your grandfather, God rest his paranoid Irish soul, locked it down tight. That is why Ethan needed this new trust. The amendment you signed last night removes the Class 5 restriction under the guise of modernizing the corporate governance. Once that document is filed with the state, the Class 5 protection evaporates. "So," I said, my voice steady, "they were one filing away from stealing it all." "No," Monica corrected. "They were one filing away from selling it all." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was an email I had missed in my initial sweep. It was from Ethan to Graham Hull, dated 2 days ago. Subject: Horizon Global Rate. Closing conditions. Body: Graham, confirm with the buyers that the Murphy Family Trust will be the executing entity. Once the amendment is signed on Monday, we can bypass the Class 5 restriction and sell the entire Ollie residential block to the rate by Friday. My fee on the transaction is set at 4%. The family gets the annuity structure we discussed. They will be happy with the monthly payouts, and I get the liquidity to cover the Iron Crest margin call. I read the email twice. The words swam before my eyes. "They are selling it," I whispered. "Grandpa's company. The buildings he built with his own hands." "They are not just selling it," Monica said ruthlessly. "They are liquidating it for parts. Ethan is selling the bulk of the portfolio to a foreign real estate investment trust. He gets a 4% closing fee that is roughly $8 million in his pocket immediately. Your parents and sister get put on a fixed allowance and annuity that pays them just enough to keep buying cars and purses, but strips them of all ownership." I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat, a hysterical, jagged thing. "They called it a kingdom," I said. "My sister, my mother, they toasted to their new kingdom. They do not even realize they signed a treaty to become tenants in their own land." "Exactly," Monica said. "Ethan is the only one who wins here. Your family thinks they are partners. In reality, they are just the cattle he is selling along with the farm." She leaned forward, her dark eyes locking onto mine. "So, here is the question, Caroline, and you need to answer it honestly. Do you want to use this leverage to negotiate a settlement? Do you want to get your shares back, slap Ethan on the wrist, and go back to Sunday dinners with a family that tried to sell you out? Or do you want to burn it down?" I looked out the window at the skyline of Houston. I thought about the draft horse. I thought about the Asuko getting cold while they laughed at me in Carbo. I thought about the years of fixing their mistakes, paying their bills, and swallowing my pride just to be allowed at the table. I realized then that I did not want a seat at their table anymore. I wanted to flip the table over. I do not want to negotiate. "Monica," I said, "I want to take the harness off. I want to make sure that when they reach for the keys to the kingdom, they find out the locks have been changed and the landlord has evicted them." Monica smiled then. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of a shark that just smelled blood in the water. "Good answer," she said. She opened a fresh legal pad and clicked her pen. "Here is the strategy. We are going to launch a three-pronged attack. It has to be precise and it has to be fast. First," she wrote the number 1. "We activate the Class 5 protection clause immediately. We are going to transfer your 51% interest out of Ali Holdings and into a new entity. I have already drafted the papers from Murphy Horizon LLC. This entity will be solely owned by you. We will use the grandfather clause to strip the assets out of the family trust before Ethan's forged amendment can be processed by the state. We will leave the shell company behind for them, but the assets will be gone." Second, she wrote the number 2. "I am bringing in Prayer Desai. She is the best forensic accountant in the state. She is going to crawl through every transaction Ethan has made in the last 4 years. She will find every dollar he stole, every credit card your mother opened in your name, and every penny Megan spent on your dime. We will build a dossier of fraud that is so thick it will have its own gravity." Third, she wrote the number 3. The timing, she looked at her watch. "They are in Carbo until Monday." "Correct." "Yes," I said. "Good. That gives us 4 days. We are going to let them enjoy their vacation. You are going to go home. You are going to text Ethan. You are going to ask him how the weather is. You are going to play the role of the oblivious, trusting wife one last time, because the moment they feel safe is the moment they get sloppy. We will file the restraining orders, the SEC complaint, and the civil lawsuit on Monday morning, exactly 1 hour after their flight takes off from Carbo. By the time they land in Houston, their phones will be exploding. Their accounts will be frozen, and the police will be waiting to ask Ethan some very uncomfortable questions about wire fraud." Monica ripped the page off the legal pad and handed it to me. "There is one more thing, Caroline," she said, her voice softening just a fraction. "What?" I asked. "You need to prepare yourself. When we pull this trigger, they are going to scream. They are going to cry. They are going to tell you that you are destroying the family. They will weaponize every memory, every guilt trip, and every insecurity you have." "I know," I said. I remembered my father's face at the dinner table. I remembered my mother's voice telling me I was selfish. Monica shook her head. "No, you do not know. Not yet. But you will. And when that happens, I want you to remember this email. I want you to remember that they were already selling you. You are not killing the family. Caroline, you are just signing the death certificate for a patient that died years ago." I stood up. I felt lighter than I had in years. It was a strange sensation, like setting down a heavy backpack I had forgotten I was wearing. I looked at the email regarding the sale of the company one last time. The betrayal was total. It was absolute. And because it was absolute, it was liberating. I owed them nothing. Not loyalty, not explanations, not mercy. "I understand," I said. Monica stood up and extended her hand. "Then go home, Caroline. Pack your bags. Move to a safe location and keep your phone on silent. The storm is over for you, but for them, it is just making landfall." I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, dry, and cool. I walked out of the office and into the elevator. As the doors closed, cutting off the view of the high-rise law firm, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. For the first time in my life, I did not see the utility child. I did not see the fixer. I did not see the draft horse. I saw the woman Seamus Ulrey had tried to protect. I saw the owner of the kingdom, and I realized that Monica was right. I was not just a participant in their game anymore. I was the one who was about to flip the board. I took out my phone. I had a text from Ethan. "Hey babe, Denver is freezing. Miss you. Hope you are not working too hard. Did you manage to send that document to Graham? Love you." I typed back, my fingers flying across the screen. "Hey honey, don't worry about anything. Everything is taken care of. Stay warm. Can't wait for you to come home to the surprise I have waiting for." I hit send. It was the most honest lie I had ever told. I really could not wait for him to come home because when he did, he would find that the locks were changed The accounts were empty, and the wife he thought he owned had become the CEO he never saw coming. The next 96 hours were not a divorce. They were a corporate extraction. If you have ever watched a heist movie, you know that the montage is the best part. The music swells. The team moves in perfect synchronization, and the impossible plan starts to look possible. But in real life, a heist is just logistics. It is paperwork. It is phone calls. It is the terrifying realization that you are dismantling your entire existence one box at a time. It started at 9:00 on Tuesday morning, not in a skyscraper, but in a small community bank in Sugarland, about 40 minutes outside the city loop. I chose it because it was boring. I chose it because nobody from the Houston social scene or Iron Crest capital would ever be caught dead standing in line there. Monica met me there with a stack of documents thick enough to stop a bullet. We sat in a small glass cubicle with a branch manager named Steve, who looked bewildered by the sheer volume of legal firepower on his desk. "We are establishing a new entity," Monica told him, her voice brooking no argument, "Murphy Horizon LLC, and we are executing an immediate transfer of these Class 5 instruments into the new trust." I signed my name until my hand cramped. With every signature, I felt a physical weight lifting off my chest. I was moving the 51% controlling interest of Ollery Holdings out of the reach of the family trust, out of the reach of Ethan, and into a fortress that only I had the keys to. When the final stamp hit the paper with a heavy thud, I looked at Monica. She gave me a single, sharp nod. The castle was no longer theirs. They just did not know it yet. By noon, Prier Desai, the forensic accountant, called me. "Caroline, you need to sit down." She said, "I am sitting." I lied. I was actually pacing the floor of the penthouse, staring at the expensive art on the walls. "It is worse than we thought," Prier said. "I found 3 more credit cards opened in your name. One was used for plastic surgery in Miami that looks like your sister. The other 2 have been paying for a storage unit and a luxury car lease for your mother. But that is the small stuff. What is the big stuff?" I asked Ethan. She said, "I found a series of consulting fees paid from Ollie Holdings to a shell company in Delaware called Vanter Black Consulting. Guess who is the sole signator?" "Ethan," I whispered. "He has been siphoning about $15,000 a month for the last 2 years." Prier said he buried it under maintenance costs. "It is classic embezzlement, Caroline. But because you gave him that power of attorney, he might argue it was authorized. He won't be able to argue that when I show the judge he forged the trust amendment." I said, my voice cold, "Keep digging, Prier. I want every receipt." I hung up and went to work on the bank accounts. This was the part that scared me the most. There is something deeply ingrained in women to be fair, even when we are being robbed. I felt a twinge of guilt as I logged into our joint checking account. There was $80,000 in there, money intended for the mortgage and property taxes. I transferred all of it. I moved it to a new secure account at the bank in Sugarland. Then I logged into the payroll system at Novacure and changed my direct deposit. For the first time in 4 years, my paycheck was going to a place where Ethan could not see it. The guilt lasted exactly 5 minutes. It vanished the moment I remembered the text message from the group chat calling me a draft horse. Draft horses do not feel guilt. They just pull the wagon, or in this case, they tip it over. Wednesday was moving day. I had secretly signed a lease for a 2-bedroom apartment in a gated complex near the medical center. It was small, the carpet was beige, the view was of a parking lot. It was perfect. Riley arrived at the penthouse at 10:00 in the morning with a rented van and a box of trash bags. "We have 4 hours before the concierge gets suspicious," Riley said, tying her hair back. "Let us move." We moved through the penthouse like a storm. I did not take the furniture. I did not take the crystal vases or the silk robes. Those things felt tainted. They felt like props on a stage set. I went to the safe and took my passport, my birth certificate, and the letter from Seamus. I went to the closet and packed my clothes. Not the gowns Ethan liked me to wear to galas, but the comfortable sweaters, the jeans, the blazers I wore when I was actually working. I took my framed diploma off the wall of the Home Office. I took the photo of my grandfather and me fishing at Lake Tacoma. I took my jewelry box, dumping the diamond earrings Ethan had given me, bought with my money, into a plastic bag, but carefully wrapping the simple pearl necklace my grandmother had left me. Then I looked at the things I was leaving behind. There was a collection of luxury watches Ethan kept in a glass winder on the dresser, a Breitling, a Rolex Daytona, a PC Philippe. He had posted a photo of them on Instagram last month with the caption, "Work hard, play hard, self-made rewards." He had bought them using the consulting fees he stole from my company. I looked at Riley. "Hand me the iPad." I said. "What are you doing?" Riley asked. "I am getting a refund." I said. I took photos of the watches. I took photos of the M's lounge chair in the corner. I took photos of the set of Louis Vuitton luggage that my mother had stored in our guest room. I took photos of the absurd $3,000 espresso machine. I created an anonymous profile on a local high-end resale app. I listed everything at 40% of the market value for a quick sale. Cash only. Must pick up today. No questions asked. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up. By 2:00 in the afternoon, strangers were coming up the service elevator. A guy in a baseball cap handed me $5,000 cash for the Rolex. The young couple carried the EMS chair out, giggling about what a steal it was. One woman buying the Louis Vuitton luggage looked at me as I counted her cash. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, looking around the half-empty room. "This is really nice stuff. Is your husband okay with this?" I looked her dead in the eye and smiled. "He bought it with my money." I said. "I am just liquidating the inventory." She looked a little scared, took the suitcases and ran. By the time we left the penthouse, the place looked like a skeleton. The luxury was gone. The warmth was gone. It was just a cold glass box in the sky. I left my key on the kitchen island, right next to the empty space where the espresso machine used to be. Thursday was for the future. I went into the Novacure office early. I walked straight to the HR director's office. I had prepared a transfer request. Novacure had a satellite office in Seattle. It was smaller, focused on RD. It rains there 9 months of the year. It is 2,000 m away from Houston. I need a transfer. I told the HR director, effective immediately. She looked at me shocked. "Caroline, you are the COO of the main branch. You run this place. Is everything okay?" "I have a personal security situation," I said, keeping my voice professional. "I need to be out of the state by Monday. If you cannot authorize it, I will have to resign." She authorized it in 10 minutes. Thursday night, I sat in my new apartment. It smelled of cleaning supplies and cardboard. I sat on the floor because I did not have a couch yet. I was eating takeout Thai food with a plastic fork. I felt lonely. The silence was heavy. But then I realized something. It was peaceful. I was not waiting for Ethan to come home and criticize my outfit. I was not checking my phone to see if my mother needed money for a crisis she created. I picked up my phone. I opened the voice memo app. I wanted to record this feeling in case I ever doubted myself later. "If you are listening to this," I said to the imaginary audience, "and you are stuck in a kingdom built on your back, listen to me. You think you cannot leave. You think the wall is too high. You think you owe them your life because they call you family. But you do not. You are the foundation. You are the only thing holding them up. And you do not have to destroy yourself to escape. You just have to pull your own brick out of the wall. The rest will come down on its own." Friday, the calm before the strike. I met Monica one last time. We sat in her conference room, staring at the timeline on the whiteboard. Monday morning, 900 hours. That was when Ethan's flight landed. That was when the bomb would drop. We scheduled the 3 strikes. Strike 1, the SEC complaint. We attached the DocuWine logs and the proof of the forged signature. We requested an immediate freeze on Iron Crest's trading license pending an investigation into executive fraud. Strike 2, the memo to the Ollie board. Monica drafted a letter informing them that the 51% controlling interest had been moved to Murphy Horizon LLC due to breach of fiduciary trust by current board advisors. It explicitly named Ethan, Patrick, and Donner as hostile actors. Strike 3, the email. I sat at Monica's computer. I drafted the email. Subject update regarding Iron Crest, Ollie Holdings, and my resignation from the family to Ethan Cross, Megan Murphy, Patrick Murphy, Donna Murphy, CC, the entire board of directors, the senior partners at Iron Crest, the pastor of my parents' church, and every major vendor we worked with. I did not write a long emotional letter. I wrote a timeline. Date Monday, August 24th. Location, Cabo San Lucas. Event forgery of trust amendment. Date Tuesday, August 25th. Location Houston. Action discovery of identity theft and embezzlement. I attached the files. The Slack chat where they called me a draft horse. The flight manifest showing the business trip was a family vacation. The letter from Grandpa Seamus. I ended it with one sentence. Effective immediately. I have severed all financial and legal ties with the individuals named above. The Ollery assets are secure. The accounts are closed. The draft horse has left the stable. I hovered the mouse over the sigil send button. My hand did not shake this time. I felt a strange sense of finality. This was it, the end of the life I had known for 34 years. I set the time for Monday 9:00 in the morning. I clicked the button. I walked out of the office and into the humid Houston afternoon. I got into my car and drove to my empty apartment. I turned off my phone. For the first time in 4 days, I slept, and for the first time in my life, I did not dream about saving anyone. Monday morning arrived with the gray, heavy humidity that blankets Houston after a storm. I was not in my corner office at Novacure. I was not in the penthouse. I was sitting in a small nondescript coffee shop in the Montreux district, watching the rain streak against the window. On the table in front of me sat my laptop, open to a livestock ticker, and my phone, face up, silent and waiting. 72 hours earlier, I had drafted the email that would end the world as my family knew it. The subject line was simple: update regarding Iron Crest Ollie Holdings and the reason for my resignation from the family kingdom. The recipient list, however, was a masterclass in scorched earth tactics to Ethan Cross, Megan Murphy, Patrick Murphy, Donna Murphy, CC, the entire board of directors of Ollie Holdings, the senior partners at Iron Crest Capital, the three biggest investors in Ethan's new fund, and for good measure, Pastor Williams at the First Baptist Church of River Oaks. I did not write a manifesto. I did not write a tear-stained letter about betrayal. I simply wrote a timeline attachment, a Slack chat log export dated August 24th showing conspiracy to defraud. Attachment B, DocuWine audit trail showing digital forgery of my signature executed from a Mexican IP address. Attachment C, flight manifest contradicting Ethan Cross's claim of a business trip to Denver. Attachment D, credit report detailing 15 years of identity theft committed by Donna Murphy and Megan Murphy. Attachment E, the Class 5 shareholder letter from Seamus Ulrey. Attachment F, legal opinion from Monica Alvarez regarding breach of fiduciary duty and intent to prosecute. My closing statement was brief, effective immediately. I have activated the Class 5 protection clause. The assets of Ollie Holdings have been transferred to a secure entity under my sole control. The family trust is empty. To my husband and family, you wanted a kingdom without a draft horse. Congratulations. You now have a castle with no foundation. Do not contact me. Any attempt to access Ollie funds will be treated as a hostile act and referred to the federal prosecutor. I looked at the clock on my laptop screen. It was 8:59 in the morning. Do you know the feeling of holding a grenade after you have already pulled the pin? Your hand does not shake. Your heart does not race. You just feel a strange cold clarity. You know that once you let go of the lever, the explosion is inevitable. The fear is gone because the choice is gone. I watched the seconds tick over. 9:00 in the morning. The email client refreshed. Status sent. I took a sip of my black coffee and waited. Across town in the glass-walled boardroom of Ollie Holdings, a very different scene was unfolding. I know this because the corporate secretary, a woman named Brenda, who had always liked me more than she liked my father, told me everything later. Ethan walked into the boardroom at 9:00 sharp. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000. He looked rested, tanned from the carbo sun, and radiantly confident. He had no idea I was gone. He had no idea the penthouse was empty. He thought I was at work, being the dutiful wife, waiting to sign his papers. He stood at the head of the heavy oak table. Around him sat the 7 members of the board of directors, mostly older men who had known my grandfather. "Good morning, gentlemen," Ethan said, flashing his winning smile. He clicked a remote, and the projector screen behind him lit up. The title slide read, "Strategic Exit of Legacy Assets, a New Era for Ollie Holdings." "Today," Ethan continued, his voice smooth and commanding, "I am presenting a vision that will liquidate our stagnant residential portfolio and pivot the capital into high-yield tech derivatives. I have secured a buyer for the bulk block. We are ready to close by Friday." He was 2 minutes into his speech when the first phone buzzed. It was a sharp, vibrating sound against the mahogany table. Then another phone chimed. Then an iPad pinged. Ethan faltered for a second but kept smiling. If everyone could please silence their devices. "We have a lot to cover." No one silenced their devices. Mr. Henderson, the chairman of the board, picked up his phone. He was 70 years old, a man who had served in Vietnam with my grandfather. He frowned, adjusting his reading glasses. Ethan stopped talking. He saw the shift in the room. The atmosphere went from attentive to confused, and then rapidly to horrified. Mr. Henderson looked up from his phone. His face was pale. He did not look at Ethan. He looked at the IT technician in the corner. "Son," Henderson said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage, "connect my iPad to the main screen. Now." "But sir," Ethan said, a flicker of panic entering his eyes. "I am in the middle of the presentation." "Sitting down," Ethan Henderson snapped. Ethan sat. He looked like a confused schoolboy. The screen flickered. Ethan's slide about synergy and growth disappeared. In its place, my email appeared. Projected 10t, tall in high definition. The room was deadly silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan. Henderson stood up and began to read. He did not read the whole thing. He just read the highlights. Draft horse, fake signature, Carbo Sam Lucas. When he got to the part about the forgery, Ethan's face went the color of dirty snow. He stood up, his hands trembling. "This is a misunderstanding." Ethan stammered. "Caroline has been under a lot of stress. She is making things up. This is a domestic dispute. It has no place in a boardroom." Henderson scrolled down. He opened attachment B, the DocuWine audit trail. "Is this IP address a misunderstanding?" Son Henderson asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Is the fact that you logged in from a resort in Mexico while claiming to be in a meeting with us a domestic dispute?" Then Henderson opened the legal opinion from Monica Alvarez based on the evidence provided. "Mr. Cross has engaged in self-denying, embezzlement of corporate funds via the Vant Black Shell Company, and securities fraud." Henderson turned to face Ethan. The look in the old man's eyes was not anger. It was disgusting. It was the look you give a thief you find going through your grandmother's purse. "You have 5 minutes to explain why I should not call the police right now," Henderson said. Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at his phone. It was vibrating continuously now. It was vibrating so hard, it was dancing across the table. While Ethan was suffocating in that boardroom, another explosion was happening in a very different location. At the First Baptist Church of River Oaks, the Ladies' Guild was gathering for their Monday morning charity planning session. My mother, Donner, was the chairwoman. She loved this role. It validated her image as the pious, suffering mother of a difficult daughter. She was standing at the front of the room holding a tray of muffins, talking about the importance of family values. Suddenly, Mrs. Gable, the deacon's wife, gasped. She was holding her iPad. "Donner, Mrs. Gable said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "You need to see this." My mother smiled, confused. "See what, Helen?" "The email from Caroline." My mother froze. She set the muffins down. She walked over to Mrs. Gable. A dozen other women were already pulling out their phones, whispering. I can only imagine the moment Donna read the section about the credit card fraud. I can only imagine the look on her face when she saw the credit report attached, listing the plastic surgery clinics and the luxury car leases she had sworn were clerical errors. The silence in that church hall must have been deafening. These were women who thrived on judgment, and my mother had just handed them The ultimate weapon. She looked around the room. The smiles were gone. The admiration was gone. In their place were the cold, judging stares of women who realized they had been lied to for years. The social credit my mother had spent her life hoarding evaporated in 10 seconds. She ran out of the room. She left her purse behind. Back in the boardroom, the execution was entering its final phase. Ethan tried to pivot. He tried to charm. "Look," he said, sweating visibly now. "Technically, the Class 5 shares are an archaic instrument. I was trying to modernize the company. I was trying to make us all money." Henderson cut him off. "We have a motion on the floor," Henderson said, "to remove Ethan Cross from all advisory roles, to ban him from the premises, and to launch an independent audit of all transactions he has touched." "Do I have a second?" said 3 board members at once. "All in favor?" Every hand went up. Ethan looked at the hands. He looked at the screen where his own words, "She is just a draft horse," were still glowing. "Get out," Henderson said. "Security will escort you to the lobby. Do not touch your laptop. Do not touch your phone. Just go." Ethan grabbed his phone anyway. He stumbled toward the door. As he pushed it open, he looked back, his eyes wild. "You are making a mistake," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You need me. She does not know how to run this." The door slammed shut in his face in the hallway alone. Ethan looked at his phone. The screen was full of notifications. SEC Enforcement Division, urgent inquiry regarding Iron Crest Capital. Iron Crest Board of Directors emergency meeting called. Attendance is mandatory. "Megan, what the hell did you do?" "Mom is hysterical." "Patrick, they froze the cards." "I cannot pay for the driver." And then he tried to call the one person he thought would fix it. He dialed my number in the coffee shop. My phone lit up. "Incoming call. Ethan." I looked at it. I took a sip of my coffee. It was still hot. I did not decline the call. I did not block him. I just let it ring. I watched the screen illuminate with his name, glowing against the wooden table. I imagined him standing in that hallway, loosening his tie, sweat dripping down his back. Realizing that the fixer was not coming, the ringing stopped. Then it started again. "Incoming call, Ethan." I turned the phone over, face down. I looked at the livestock ticker on my laptop. The news had not hit the public markets yet, but it would soon. Iron's reputation was about to nosedive. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. I waited for the panic. I waited for the regret. I waited for the urge to pick up the phone and tell him I could make it go away if he just apologized. But it never came. Instead, I felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. It was the feeling of a balance sheet finally balancing out. It was the feeling of a debt being paid in full. I closed my laptop. The rain had stopped. The sun was trying to break through the clouds over Houston. I stood up, left the $5 tip on the table, and walked out of the coffee shop. My phone was still vibrating on the table, buzzing against the wood like a trapped insect. I left it there. I did not need it anymore. I had a new phone in my bag with a new number that none of them had. The kingdom was empty. The walls had fallen, and the draft horse was finally running free. The distance between my old life and my new one was exactly 4 miles. I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment in the medical district. It was a small beige box with industrial carpet that smelled of lemon cleaner. I had a single lamp on the floor, a mattress in the corner, and a view of a dumpster in the parking lot. But to me it looked like a palace. It looked like freedom 4 miles away in the penthouse towering over downtown Houston. The scene was very different. I know this because sound carries and desperation carries even further. Ethan had rushed straight from the Ollie board meeting to the penthouse. He must have been hoping to catch me to force me to undo the damage before the rest of the family arrived, but he was too late. My parents and Megan had just arrived from the airport. They had walked into the apartment expecting cool air conditioning, a stocked fridge, and a compliant daughter waiting to hear about their trip. Instead, they walked into an echo chamber. The living room was empty. The EMS chair was gone. The Louis Vuitton luggage my mother kept there was gone. The espresso machine was gone. The only things left were the heavy built-in fixtures that I could not legally sell. I can picture it perfectly. My mother, Donner, collapsing onto the hardwood floor where the silk rug used to be, wailing as if she were at a funeral. My father, Patrick, red-faced and sweating in his travel clothes, kicking a wall and screaming profanities that would make a sailor blush. And Megan, the princess, throwing her phone against the marble kitchen island, shattering the screen because she could not handle the reality staring back at her. Then came the silence, the terrifying silence of realization. Ethan opened his laptop on the kitchen counter. I imagine his hands were shaking so badly he could barely type his password. He logged into our joint bank account. Balance $0. He tried the credit cards, declined. Account closed by primary account holder. He tried the corporate card for Iron Crest, suspended. Recent. Securities and Exchange Commission investigation pending. They were trapped in a glass tower with no food, no car service, no money, and a mortgage payment due in 10 days that none of them could afford. That was when my phone started to ring. I had placed it on the floor in the center of the room, face up. I sat cross-legged about 3 feet away from it, watching it light up like a hazardous object. The screen flashed Ethan work. I watched the name glow. I watched the vibration rattle, the phone against the cheap laminate flooring. My thumb twitched. It is a reflex. You see, for 4 years, every time that name appeared, I jumped. I answered. I fixed. If he called, it meant he needed something, and my entire worth was tied to my ability to provide it. But today I sat on my hands. I let it ring. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, voicemail. Then it rang again immediately. Ethan, work. I took a deep breath. I realized then that silence is not just the absence of noise. It is an action. It is a wall. It is the loudest thing you can say to someone who expects your obedience. I did not decline the call. Declining is a reaction. I simply let it exist unanswered until it stopped. Then came the notification, a voicemail from Donner. I played it on speakerphone, letting her voice fill the empty apartment. Caroline. Her voice was high, frantic, wet with tears. Caroline, pick up the phone. What is wrong with you? We are at the penthouse. There is no furniture. We cannot order food because the cards are down. This is your family. Caroline. How can you be so cruel? There was a pause, a sniffing sound, and then the tone shifted. It shifted from begging to the old familiar manipulation. Look, I know you are upset about the trip, but you are blowing this out of proportion. We just wanted everyone to be safe. You have always been like this ever since you were little. So sensitive, so dramatic. You need to forgive your sister. She was just trying to help you sign the papers because you were too busy. Call me back right now. Young lady, she was just trying to help you. She was talking about a felony. She was talking about identity theft, and she spun it as a favor. I deleted the voicemail. I did not feel angry. I felt validated. It was proof that I had made the right choice. They were incapable of seeing me as a person. To them, I was just a malfunctioning appliance that needed to be kicked until it started working again. Then my phone pinged with an Instagram notification. Megan had posted a story. Of course she had. When in doubt, perform. It was a black screen with white text. It is sad when people you love let jealousy turn them into monsters. Some people cannot handle seeing others shine. Lies are being spread about my family today, but the truth will win. God knows my heart. I almost laughed. God knows my heart. I clicked on the comments. Usually, Megan deleted negative comments within seconds. But today, she must have been too busy screaming at Ethan to moderate her feed. The comments were pouring in. A user named Texas Girl 9 wrote, "Jealousy, honey. We saw the email. Your sister brought receipts." A user named Fraud Watch wrote, "Is it true you forged her signature? That is federal prison time. Sweetie, not a good look." A user named Riley. The nurse wrote, "You are not a victim. Megan, you are a home wrecker and a gold digger who got caught. Pack your bags." I watched as Megan deleted the story 30 seconds later. The court of public opinion had ruled, and for the first time, the verdict was not in her favor. Then came the call from my father. It was the 13th time he had called in an hour. This time he left a voicemail. I hesitated, then pressed play. He was not crying. He was growling. "You think you are smart, girl. You think you can just walk away. You are nothing without this family. You are a cold, unlovable woman. Caroline, that is why Ethan needed a break from you. That is why we all needed a break. You think you can live alone? Wait until you are sick. Wait until you are old. Who is going to be by your bedside? Not us. You are going to die alone, and you will deserve it. The room went cold. I looked at the empty walls. You are going to die alone. That was their ultimate threat. That was the leash they had used to choke me for decades. The fear of abandonment. But, as his voice faded, I felt a strange smile touch my lips. It was a sad smile, but it was genuine. I spoke to the empty room. Dad, I have been alone since I was 10 years old. I was alone at my graduation. I was alone when I was paying your mortgage. I was alone in my marriage. Being physically alone in this apartment was not a punishment. It was just the first time the external reality matched my internal truth, and honestly, it was much quieter this way. A knock on the door made me jump. I froze. Had they found me? Has Ethan tracked my phone? Open up, draft horse, a voice called out. I'd brought fuel. It was Riley. I unlocked the door. Riley stood there holding 2 large pepperoni pizzas and a 6-pack of cheap beer. She looked at my empty apartment, then at me. She did not hug me. She did not say, I told you so. She just walked in, sat on the floor, and opened a beer. So she said, taking a bite of pizza, I hear the kingdom is burning. I sat down next to her. It is, I said. And they are blaming me for the matches. Riley laughed. She clink-kicked her beer bottle against mine. Listen to me, Caroline, she said seriously. They are screaming that the house is on fire, but you did not set the fire. You just finally took your own gas can out of the basement and walked away. Spontaneous combustion happens when you stack that much rotting garbage in one place. We sat there for hours eating pizza on the floor and watching Netflix on my laptop. Every few minutes my phone would light up with another call from Ethan or my mother. Let me see, Riley said, grabbing my phone. She looked at the screen. Ethan work was calling for the 50th time. He is desperate, she observed. He knows he is about to lose the only thing he actually loves. Nip, I asked. No, Riley said. Your credit score. We laughed. It was a dark, jagged sound, but it felt good. Later that night, after Riley left, I opened my laptop one last time. I logged into the email account I had used to send the blast. I expected hate mail. I expected threats from Ethan's lawyers. Instead, I found something else. There were dozens of replies. They were from people I had known for years, but never really known. One was from a cousin in Oklahoma I had not seen in a decade. Caroline, I just saw the email. I am so sorry. We always wondered why Donna treated you like the help. We are proud of you. One was from the wife of one of Ethan's business partners. Caroline, please do not quote me, but thank you for saying it. We always knew something was wrong with the way he talked to you. You deserve better. One was from the pastor, Pastor Williams. Caroline, the truth is a heavy burden, but it sets us free. I will be praying for your peace, and I will be having a serious conversation with your parents about their role in the congregation. I sat there reading these messages with tears streaming down my face. For years, I thought I was invisible. I thought everyone bought the happy family act. I thought I was the crazy one for feeling used, but they had seen me. They had seen the truth. They just did not know how to say it until I said it first. I closed the laptop. I looked at my phone. It was finally silent. They had stopped calling. They had realized that the line was dead. I want to say this to you. To anyone listening who is sitting in the dark, wondering if they should pick up the phone. There will be a moment when the silence becomes unbearable. You will want to answer. You will want to explain yourself. You will want to comfort the very people who just stabbed you in the back because you are programmed to fix their pain. Do not do it. Do not pick up the phone. Let them sit in the wreckage they created. Let them feel the weight of their own actions. You cannot teach someone a lesson by protecting them from the consequences. I turned off the light. I lay down on the mattress in the corner of the beige room. For the first time in 10 years, I did not set an alarm for the next morning. I did not need to wake up early to manage a crisis. The crisis was over. My life was just beginning. The wheels of justice turn slowly, they say, but when you grease them with a stack of forensic evidence and a federal inquiry, they can move with terrifying speed. The SEC did not just open an investigation into Ironcrest Capital, they tore it apart. Within 48 hours of my email, federal agents were walking out of the Ironcrest headquarters carrying boxes of hard drives. The sight of Ethan's meticulously curated office being dismantled was broadcast on every financial news channel in the country. I did not watch it on TV. I watched it from a witness room in the federal courthouse. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Vance, sat across from me. Beside me was Monica Alvarez, looking like a general who had already won the war, but was enjoying the cleanup. "We need your statement on the signature," Ms. Vance said, "and we need to understand the extent of the asset misappropriation." I told them everything. I told them about the draft horse text messages. I told them about the business trip to Carbo. I told them about the years of financial gaslighting. But the real drama happened during the internal hearing at Ironcrest, a video of which was later subpoenaed and played during the proceedings. In the video, Ethan looked haggard. His tan from Carbo had faded into a sickly gray. He stood before his own partners, desperate to save his skin. "This is all a misunderstanding," Ethan pleaded on the screen, his hands shaking. "You have to understand. My wife Caroline is unstable. She has significant childhood trauma. She imagines things. The signature discrepancy was a staff error. I was trying to protect the assets from her erratic behavior." I watched the video in the courtroom, feeling a cold stone in my stomach. Even at the end, even when he was cornered, his instinct was to paint me as the crazy, emotional woman. That was when Monica stood up. She did not raise her voice. She simply walked to the podium and laid down a file thicker than a Bible. "Your Honor," Monica said, "the defense claims Mrs. Murphy is unstable. We submit 15 years of credit card statements, loan applications, and medical bills taken out in my client's name by her mother, Donna Murphy, and her sister, Megan Murphy. We also submit proof that Mr. Cross was aware of this identity theft and used it as leverage to coerce my client into compliance. This was not a staff error. This was a systemic, decade-long extraction of wealth from a victim they groomed to be silent." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. But the final nail in the coffin came from the past. It came from Seamus Ulrey. Monica pulled out a document that had been buried in the original corporate charter of Ulrey Holdings. It was a clause I had not even known existed until Monica found it during her deep dive. Section 4, Paragraph 2, the Founder Integrity Clause. It stated that the holder of the Class 5 shares may have the unilateral right to void any commercial contract or alliance if the counterparty was found to have committed fraud against the Ulrey family name or assets. It sounds like legal jargon, but in practice it was a nuclear bomb. It meant that every deal Ethan had built using the Ulrey reputation was void, the sale to the foreign void, the collateral he had put up for his margin calls void, the partnership agreements he had signed with other firms based on our family assets. Void in one sentence. Monica did not just sue Ethan. She erased his entire professional portfolio. The scene in the courtroom when the judge accepted this clause was something I will never forget. My family was sitting in the front row behind Ethan. They looked small. They looked terrified. My mother, Donna, stood up. She was wearing a dress that looked too big for her. "Now, Your Honor," she cried out, her voice cracking. "Please, my son-in-law was just trying to help the family. We are good people. We go to church. My daughter is just angry because we went on a vacation without her." "Sit down, Mrs. Murphy." The bailiff warned. My father Patrick stood up next. "It is the banks," he shouted, waving his hand. "The banking system is too complicated. How are we supposed to know which card was which? It is a mistake." And Megan, the pageant princess, sat there, weeping into a tissue. She looked at the judge with wide, innocent eyes. I thought I was just signing a permission slip. She sobbed like I did for her when we were kids. I was just trying to be a helpful sister. The judge, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked like he had seen every excuse in the book, slammed his gavel down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Enough," the judge barked. "This is a federal courtroom, not your family dinner table. I am looking at forensic logs. I am looking at forged IP addresses. I am looking at a stolen identity. Do not insult my intelligence with tears." He turned to Ethan. "Mr. Cross," the judge said, "in light of the overwhelming evidence, the prosecutor has offered a plea deal." Ethan stood up. He looked around the room. He looked at his lawyers who were staring at their desks. He looked back at my family. For years, Ethan had bought their loyalty. He had paid for their cars, their trips, their lifestyle. He had made them feel like royalty. But in that moment, when he needed a character witness, when he needed someone to stand up and say he was a good man, they abandoned him. Donner looked away, studying her fingernails. Patrick stared at his shoes. Megan was busy frantically deleting photos from her phone. Ethan stood alone. The king of the castle had no subjects left. "I accept the deal, Your Honor," Ethan whispered. The terms were brutal. He had to resign as CEO of Iron Crest immediately. He was banned from working in the securities or investment industry for 10 years. He had to pay restitution of $2 million to O'Leary Holdings, and he pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud, carrying a suspended sentence and 3 years of probation. If he stepped a toe out of line, he would go to prison. But honestly, the ban was worse than prison. For a man like Ethan, being stripped of his status, his title, and his ability to make deals was a fate worse than death. Then it was my turn. "Ms. Murphy," the judge said, "do you have a victim impact statement?" I walked to the podium. I did not have a tight speech. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled, yellowed letter from my grandfather. I unfolded it. My hands were steady. "My grandfather, Seamus O'Leary, wrote this to me 20 years ago." I said into the microphone. My voice was calm. It did not shake. He wrote, "If they do not respect the name O'Leary, let them carry a different name when they leave." Today, I am honoring his wish. I looked at Ethan. I looked at my parents. "I am not asking for revenge," I continued. "I am asking for correction. I request that the restitution funds paid by Mr. Cross and the recovered assets from the voided contracts be placed into a new trust. Not for me, but to establish the Seamus O'Leary Scholarship Fund." A murmur went through the courtroom. "This fund," I said, looking directly at my mother, "will provide full tuition and housing for students who have been victims of financial abuse by their own families. It will give them the resources to leave. It will give them the freedom to build their own kingdoms on their own terms." The judge smiled. It was a small, tight smile, but it was there. "Request granted," the judge said. He banged the gavel. "Court is adjourned." The sound of that final gavel strike was the sweetest sound I have ever heard. It was the sound of a heavy door locking, keeping the monsters on the other side. I gathered my things and walked toward the exit. The whole way outside the courtroom was chaos. Financial reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing. And there, huddled in a corner near the water fountain, was the Murphy Cross kingdom. Ethan, Donner, Patrick, and Megan stood in a tight circle. They were holding the judgment papers. Their eyes were red. Their hands were shaking. When they saw me, they uncoiled. They rushed toward me, desperate, frantic. "Caroline," my mother cried, reaching out to grab my arm. Her face was a mask of panic. "We are still family. You cannot just leave us like this." The judge took the house. "Where are we supposed to go?" Megan wiped her mascara-stained eyes. "Caroline, please. The internet is destroying me. I lost my brand deals. You have to post something. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." Just one post. Ethan stood in front of me. He looked stripped. The arrogance was gone. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to stand up straight. "Caroline," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "I love you. You know that, right? I was just under so much pressure. We can fix this. We were a good team." I stopped. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the fear in their eyes. But I also saw the calculation. Even now, even while begging, they were trying to figure out how to use me. They wanted my money to save their house. They wanted my reputation to save their brand. They wanted my forgiveness to save their conscience. I stepped back out of my mother's reach. I paused for a second, letting the silence stretch between us one last time. "The family does not plan to sell you out," I said quietly. I looked at Ethan and your kingdom. It never included me. I was just the fuel you burned to keep the lights on. I turned my back on them. Caroline, my father shouted. I kept walking. I walked through the double doors, past the security guards and out into the bright, blinding sunlight of downtown Houston. The storm had passed days ago, but only now did the air feel clean. The humidity was gone. The sky was a piercing, impossible blue. Sitting on the concrete steps of the courthouse was Riley. She was wearing sunglasses and holding two large iced coffees. She stood up when she saw me. She did not ask how it went. She saw my face and she knew. She handed me a coffee. The condensation was cold against my palm. "Cattle is still waiting," Riley said, grinning. I took a sip. It tasted like sugar and caffeine and victory. "Yes," I said. "It is." I looked back at the courthouse one last time. I thought about the people inside, shivering in the hallway, holding on to a past that no longer existed. I turned away and walked toward the street where a taxi was waiting to take me to the airport. I do not know what my future holds. I do not know if I will ever get married again. I do not know if I will ever build another fortune. But I know this today. For the first time in 34 years, everything collapsed exactly where it was supposed to. The foundation is clean, and the builder is finally free. If you are listening to this and if you suspect that your CEO husband is taking a secret trip with your sister, or if your family makes you feel small so they can feel big, please remember this. You do not need to set yourself on fire to keep their kingdom warm. You do not need to be the draft horse. You can simply unplug the castle, walk out the front door, and never look back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So, please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on the ending. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story get heard by more people. Stay strong and stay free.